BioPatrika, your very own online science communication, brings science closer to you in so many ways. Today, SciConnect by BioPatrika welcomes all science enthusiasts to expert engage with Dr. Narendra Chirmule. I, Vikram Gujar, with Charu, Gupta, and Shreyansh Tiwari, have been given the honor to hear of a unique journey traversing academia and industry, culminating in an eminent personality that we all aspire to be. Dr. Chirmule, a respected immunologist, has spent a 40-year-long career facilitating vaccine development and overseeing drug development in academia, as well as with his directorial time in clinical immunology departments of Biocon, Amgen, and Merck. As an entrepreneur, he co-founded Symphony Biologics, a data analytics company, and currently serves as a CEO and director. On several disease importance advisory boards in India and USA, Naren sir manages to find time to explore his love for Indian classical music too. We welcome this excellent scientist, writer, orator, and magnanimous personality, Dr. Narendra Chirmule sir.
Naren, we are guilty of stalking you on LinkedIn, and we already know quite a lot about you. However, we want a deeper insight into what is unsaid. So we want to know more about your journey and early experiences. Let's begin with a look in your early beginnings. So maybe up till your master's, how did you get hooked on to science?
Yeah, first, thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction, Vikram, and Charu and Shreyansh. Thank you for having this session. I think I'll try to give short answers so that maybe we can get through more questions. And if there are anything to elaborate, then we can elaborate. Just to plug in my book, which I've recently written, a lot of questions that I think people ask me, the answers for them are in this book. So I'll give the short answers, and you can read up a little bit more on the later part. So the short answer to the interest in science is my learnings that I've had over the years, that it is the teacher in the school who influences what you work on. So there were teachers, Dr. Gaun, Ajay Gaun, and Dr. Khan, who were really the chemistry and biology teachers who I loved their way of teaching, right? And so that's how I got hooked into science. Later on, Dr. Ashok Bhagwat in my college was a big influence to me on how biology is perceived. And over the years, those mentors helped in understanding how to get into science. But also for my parents, both my parents have been sort of in the sciences. My father was an engineer. My mother taught mathematics all her life in high school. Okay. And so I've been influenced quite a bit on the science side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, your early experiences that kind of shape you into becoming who you are. And it was really nice of you to mention your book, because we do have some exciting questions about it later in the podcast.
Okay.
So you carried your love for science throughout your career, and you still have it today. You spent several years in academia. You have a PhD on leprosy vaccines, postdoctoral contribution to HPV, shingles, rotavirus, and HIV drug. I mean, wow. And you also developed several vaccines, much to peer acclaim. What was the one thing that you loved about academic research, and the one thing you absolutely abhorred?
The second question was what?
Something you absolutely hated.
I hated. What you liked? Yeah, that's a good way. Hate is a strong word. But let's see what I liked in academic research. I think what I liked in academic research is the constant curiosity that you have, and the constant curiosity that everyone around you has. And it sort of feeds the academic environment, whether it's students in the college or university, whether they are professors, whether they are people visiting from outside, like places like UPenn that I was fortunate to be in, used to have lectures from outside visitors all the time, and they're presenting completely different things, right? So when I was at UPenn, I used to go and listen to lectures on physics, on social sciences, because they're just available. You have access to them. So this curiosity aspect of being in academia was very interesting for me. in retrospect, and it's not so acute at that time. I don't know why I was doing what I was doing at that time, but in retrospect, I was curious and I was trying to learn many different things and maybe connect the dots later on.
Yeah.
What I liked about industry is the sort of almost regimented way of doing work. You have goals, you have quarterly reports, you have quarterly things that you have to complete. And, it's a very regimented way of doing things. So the organized way of doing things is what I liked about the industry.
Right.
What I didn't like about academia, actually, there's not much I didn't like about academia, other than the fact that academia, for whatever reason, pays less than industry.
Yes. I mean, that is something that we absolutely hate, that, we don't get enough, we don't get enough benefits for our contribution in a way. Like,
but we don't put a value on the things that we get.
That's
and
true.
Therefore, it only comes down to money. But it's not really the money, right? It's the satisfaction can be a contribution of many different things, but we don't realize that we're getting much more than we bargained for.
Yeah, I mean,
and in industry, just to finish that circle, the thing that I didn't like, I guess everybody goes through this, and it is not specific to industry anywhere. It is as you grow up in your career, the politics of how to work with people, the politics, the interactions, the egos, all the things that the human nature brings, becomes very competitive. And so that part is what I didn't like about industry, but it was a very small part of the overall experience.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, of course, this was a sort of a bare-all answer. And I feel like this expressed a lot of our feelings as well. And it's nice to hear it from someone like you, because it kind of just inundates that, yes, what we're feeling is also somewhere something that it gives a community kind of a feeling, with academics. But what I have to definitely agree with you is that we have kind of a symbiotic relationship in academia. We get we sort of leech out passion from people, or maybe not leech out, but if someone is passionate and excited, then we get passionate and excited. So it's an electric environment throughout academia. So but would you say that you said that industry is very regimental, it's very goal oriented? Is the passion still there?
Yeah, passion is something that is has to be intrinsic, right? So you have to be, the company may go through ups and downs and everything, but your passion should be consistent. And it's nice to say that on paper, but you go through ups and downs. You have very highs going on. If you have some great accomplishment at work that's going on. But something not going on great in your life, you may not be healthy, or you may, somebody in your family, something may be happening, or your family, your yin and yang is always, it's never always balanced, right? Sometimes that is up, sometimes this is up. And when whichever is down, you keep focusing on what is down, and you don't worry, and you don't think about what's up there. So we always gravitate towards focusing on the negative things. So somehow I've learned the processes of keeping on focusing on the positive things and not worrying about the negative things.
That's a very nice thought, and it's something that we should all live by, I think. It doesn't hurt to be an optimist. Yeah. So the other thing that from your previous answer, since industry is so goal oriented, it's something that has to push and has to produce something. Like we have currently with the COVID-19 vaccines, which, like, all of the industry had a goal. We need to get this done. Does that also give you opportunity to explore things? Like in academia, you attended physics lectures, and so does industry also promote cross contamination in a way with other ideas, or is it limiting?
No, in fact, I think it depends on the individual sometimes. Some people are interested in focusing deep into their career. Like if there's an analytical scientist who's learning, let's say, how to do mass spectrometry, and a lot of mass spectrometry requires deep understanding of technology, right? and newer mass spectrometers are coming out, and ability to do more and more analysis. So when you have to dig deep, you do it at the expense of breadth, because you only have so much time. But then some people like to do the breadth. Like, I want to do analytical science. I also want to learn about marketing. I also want to learn about human resources. So industries do provide opportunities to shift laterally when opportunities arise. It's not easy, but definitely can be done. And it has to be driven by the employee.
Okay. Yeah. Since I already touched on the COVID-19 aspect, I have to ask you, since you're a vaccine expert, how do you feel about the current mRNA-based vaccines versus the traditional attenuated ones? Is the efficacy the same?
Well, I think the data suggests that the efficacy is quite remarkable. From a statistical perspective, both vaccines that have been approved in the US have got approval greater than 95%.
Yes.
Based on the standard criteria of how we define vaccine efficacy. So they've met those criteria.
Yeah.
And from a manufacturing perspective, the ability to make them quickly, to scale up quickly, to distribute them quickly, have been very, very successful. And so this is one example of an innovation that seemed like it was done overnight, but took 30 years of background work that was happening that people didn't see.
Yeah. Following up on that, it was a very good point that you mentioned that it took 30 years to get where we are today. And the recent Nobel Prize was also validating the same sentiment. There is still much disagreement over the use of these vaccines. And, the thing that you just said, some people think it's too new, but it didn't happen overnight. There's always the lack of data question. We don't know what happens 6 months after taking the vaccine. Well, we know now, but what about 1 year? And there are always some people who are simply anti-vaxxers. So are these vaccines safe? How do we put our audience's mind at ease? Because we have people who associate with every sort of sentiment.
Yeah. So, like any drug, and similar to that, any vaccine, it is always a balance between efficacy and safety. So there's no drug that is 100% efficacious, has zero side effects, and is free. This is the ideal drug, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you will always have less than 100% efficacy, more than 0% safety, and it'll cost something, right? And it's a balance between these three things. So similarly, every vaccine has some side effect and will have some effect. So one of the ways I've been sort of trying to answer the question, especially with vaccines and also with many other things these days, it seems, is that when you ask me which vaccine is better, because I've been reading a lot about each of these vaccines, my answer is all are equally bad. Take anyone, all are equally bad.
Okay.
So there's no perfect vaccine. So that's sort of a short answer to your question. But realistically, I think, like, to answer your question about for people who don't believe in vaccines or have this idea. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. That's what the beauty of the human population is. Everyone thinks differently.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there are everything sort of always falls into a low, medium, high bucket, right? So when any problem that you have, the solution to that always falls into a low, medium, high bucket. That's kind of generally how I address any issue that I'm facing. So in the anti-vaxxers discussion, if you consider what the low, medium, high are, there are some people who don't want to take the vaccine because of their own personal experiences that they have. Because they had a huge rash when they took some vaccine.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, I don't want to take any vaccine because maybe all vaccines induce this rash and it's really bad, because I have my personal story to tell.
Yeah.
So if I have a personal story of something really bad happened to a family member who took a vaccine, those people, it's hard to convince them otherwise, because you need a lot of data to show them that, that was a rare case of whatever happened.
Yeah.
Right? For them, it was not rare. It happened to them. You can't ignore the fact. And more likely than not, it happened because of the vaccine, maybe, most likely, right? Because of the rare side effects that we see. So those are one group of people. The other group, the extreme, let's come to the extreme group later, but there are another group of people who are I would say, accidental anti-vaxxers. Like, for example, they could also toggle in that first group. Paul Offit tells a story when he's written a book and he's also talked to an NPR, and I like the story that he tells. Is he was in his clinic, and he's a pediatric infectious disease person in Children's Hospital here in Philadelphia. And he tells a story where there was a patient, there was a little child who had come to get their regular shot for their vaccine to his vaccine clinic. The mother was holding the child and ready, and Paul had taken the syringe and filled the syringe with the vaccine and about to give the vaccine. Just before giving the vaccine, the child had some kind of an epileptic seizure.
Oh.
Just before giving the vaccine, because there was some underlying condition that the child had before, and suddenly that child got some seizure. For example, I'm just giving you what he actually said.
Yeah.
Now, if the child had got a seizure after the vaccine was given, there was no way you could have convinced the mother that it wasn't because of the vaccine.
True.
Right. So this is that group of people who've actually seen things happening with the vaccine, and you can't convince them no matter how much data you provide. Right. So those are, I would say those are the legitimate anti-vaxxers who are making the decision not to take the vaccine because of the data and the risk they don't want to take. Now, there's a whole different explanation that we might have to, the people have to give them, is because, especially for COVID vaccines, sometimes you don't wear a mask or take vaccines necessarily to protect yourself, but you take it to protect others. Also, right? So the fact that you're not infected helps somebody else who might be infected because you might transmit the virus. So this group of people are people who I think with data can convince or not convince, but give them the data, enough data for them to make the decision of going one way or the other. The other group of people who are the real anti-vaxxers, I would say, are just fanatics, and you can't have rational discussions with them. So I don't know how to convince them that that vaccines are not good, but the less I talk about it right now, the better it is, because my own sanity, I guess.
Probably these are, I guess, the YouTube and Google scientists.
Yeah. So I think I'm a strong believer that vaccine provides more benefit than the small risk that it does, and that's what I will talk about.
Yeah. And I mean, you've proved that, your desire to make a larger impact on how society gets its medicine and drugs through your change from a prolific academic career to industry. So, I mean, I've already probably put words in your mouth, but was this the only reason that you changed, or was there another reason that you moved to industry?
Well, I think money obviously was one of the criteria. It is not only the money, but money significantly in the industry. That's attractive when you're in a young career. When you have to raise a family and you have to do all your responsibilities. Money has a big role in your life at that time, and when industry provides that opportunity of getting more money, why not, right? So that was one of the drivers. But then I think after I moved to industry, I realized that there's enormous amount of science that is done in industry. I think it's underestimated of how much deep science is done in industry, because there is a sort of stigma in academia in general, and all over the world, I think, that when you move to the industry, they say something like you've gone to the dark side, or you've something like that. But I think different kind of work is done in academia and different kind of work is done in industry. So in the drug development process, the academics are the ones who are discovering the mechanisms of disease. They're looking at mechanism of action of a drug, and they're identifying, the initial, which they're screening a lot of different things to find out what may or may not work, right? What industry does well is, once you know what works, how to take it through the drug development process of doing the pharmacology, toxicology, clinical trials, manufacturing, and getting them tested in human clinical trials and doing all of that. That's what the industry does. For the most part, 80% of the time, industry does all of that and academia does the discovery part. Where both of them get into trouble when academics try to manufacture the drug or the industry try to discover a disease. Because they are not equipped. Neither is equipped to do the other person's job. So, but the human nature, we always want to do more than we can.
Yeah, that's true. So what you've kind of given to us is a little bit of a direction that, academia plays a role in the beginning. You study the disease, you characterize it, you find out targets. And then the industry sort of moves into developing a drug for those targets, doing the clinical trials. But there's an amalgamation now, right? So some industries like to hire certain labs or give them some grants to do these preclinical studies, etc. You've spent time in labs in USA and in India, and in both academia and industry. What is your comparison of these sort of amalgamations in both these countries, since we are at different levels of research at the moment?
Yeah, maybe we start with the US first.
Okay.
So I think US has had a very important funding agencies in the US for supporting academic research, whether it is the NIH or the National Science Foundation, or even the defense grants. There's the small business grants. So the government supported funding in the US has been going on for the last 50 years, if not more, 100.
Okay.
So academic research is reasonably well funded to do very high-end research. In fact, most of the real discoveries are done in academia, in NIH-funded grants, right? So NIH funds very high-risk projects, which may or may not succeed, right? Okay. But academia does that kind of work, and the collaboration with academia and the industry, which leads to licensing of molecules or patents, is very systematically organized in the United States. I mean, I'm talking about the majority of the institutions which have like Penn, Columbia, Cornell, the big universities. I'm sure smaller universities do too. They have a business division. They have a licensing division which can work. The academics can work with the licensing division to work with the industry to license their ideas into the industry.
Okay. And
similarly, the industry also has an interest in getting licensed molecules and mechanism of action patents for their products for a price. So that system has been going on for the last at least 50 years in the United States, and it's a well-oiled machine now. It's going quite well in the US. And also from the industry side, this is the academic industry collaboration, and also from the venture capital process, right? There is the venture capital franchise is much more aware of the risks that are involved in drug discovery in biotechnology, and therefore they are investing in something that doesn't have immediate return of investment, right? So the whole system sort of has a good environment for everyone to succeed in their own space. Now let's move to India. And in India, what happens is biotechnology is just beginning right now, as far as industry as the industry per se is concerned. Department of Biotechnology and BIRAC, these government agencies, have started doing the funding like NIH used to do or still does, but the magnitude is much lower, right? So if a large organization, if a large academic or government institution in the US has a budget, it'll be in billions of dollars. A few billions of dollars will be the budget in a university like Penn or large institution, right? Institution like All India Institute of Medical Sciences or NCBS will not have, it will only be in the few millions of dollars, not even few hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's true.
So the magnitude of investment in India for doing biotechnology is multiple logs lower, right? Obviously, so that is one barrier to entry. Department of Biotechnology is trying to overcome that barrier by providing the funding that is required to get there. So, but we are just in the beginning phases right now, right? So the academic research is still very, very dependent on these grants to do the funding.
Yeah.
Similarly, the appetite for risk in the biotechnology sector in India is very low. Or the venture capital in India, the appetite for them is very low. Only few venture capitalists will venture into something in which the return of investment may be 20 years later.
Yes.
Everybody wants an investment immediately. I want my return of investment 2-fold, 3-fold, 10-fold within 2 years. That doesn't happen in industry. So that awareness that the industry takes a long time to get returns is a very foreign concept for investors in India.
Yes.
And that will take time. That will take time. There has to be some success stories, and those success stories will lead to improvement of that. I feel fortunate to be in the space in both these countries where I can participate in the conversations and actually do the work in that space in this area. Just if you may, I was having a conversation with my friend recently in Boston who's sort of my mentor and helps me to understand this investment part, because that's not sort of my expertise.
Yeah.
So a conversation in India would happen like this, right? A VC would go to an academic or a small biotech company, and biotech company would say, we are developing a drug, and I want you to invest $10 million in my company, right? And the VC will ask a question, okay, I'll invest $10 million, but then when am I going to get the money back? He said, no, you'll never get the money back. You may never get the money back in the next 10 years. And okay, then obviously why should I put the $10 million? Okay, all right. Then let me see. Well, then are you, when will your cash flow start? I said, there'll be no cash flow in my company. You're going to give me $10 million, there will be no cash flow in my company because I'm developing a drug. I'm in fact going to ask you 2 years from now, I'm going to ask you $100 million because I still need to do my 30 million. So not only am I not going to give you cash flow back, but I'm going to ask you for more money in the next couple of years. Okay, you don't have cash flow. It's like, how about expenses? And what about that? Yeah, no, I'll only have expenses. I have no cash flow. I have nothing. Then the investor will look at, why am I giving you this money? Oh, there is a likelihood that you will get $1 billion 10 years from now if someone buys us. What is that likelihood? Maybe 2% probability. Okay. So then the investor said, if I just put $10 million in a bank, they'll give me 15% interest.
Yeah.
Why should I bother about this 2% probability of $1 billion 10 years from now? So when you look at it logically, the investor is not, the average investor is not used to this conversation. Right?
Yeah.
And there are very few people, there are a few companies, there are a few investors in India who are doing this actively now, but for the most part, this is the kind of investor. In the IT industry, you give money to the IT industry, you get money back quickly.
Yes.
And the expenses are very low. I just need one high school student to program my software.
Right.
And I've suddenly got a product which can make millions of dollars for me. I'm exaggerating, obviously.
Yeah.
But but the biotechnology sector is going to take some time to get to a place where we will be. I think what India is very good at is leapfrogging technologies. So we didn't have phones, we didn't have landlines. Now 900 million cell phones in India. We leapfrog the entire digital industry. We didn't have a banking system. There were no banks. People didn't. We have a whole secondary economy of people who don't use banks, right?
Yeah.
Today, the UPI system, everybody has a bank on their phone.
Yes.
Everybody has a bank on their phone. You have credit on your phone, right?
Yes.
So India is very good at leapfrogging industry, the leapfrogging technologies. So I'm hoping that in the biotechnology sector, there will be some kind of a leap that will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, which will transform how drug development happens in the world. And India may have the opportunity to show that, to make extremely cheap drugs and reduce the cost of healthcare enormously.
Yeah.
I think India has that potential to do that.
Yeah.
What will be that technology? What will be that inflection point that will make that happen? I don't know, but I want to play in that sandbox.
Yeah, that's what you're saying is quite interesting, because so during this COVID-19 pandemic, there were shortages of oxygen cylinders, of concentrators, and of overall all sorts of medical equipment. And so I'm from IIT Kanpur, and that's why I know a little bit more about that. They have an incubation cell where they had a couple of startups who produced cheap medical equipment and also these oxygen concentrators. So I want to ask you, as you mentioned with venture capitalists, there are some people who are putting in money. And these days, people are putting this kind of money more into incubation cells, into startups. So is that probably the leapfrogging that you're referring to? Is that our way to gain visibility?
Yeah, I think I don't have a magic ball to say that this is the thing that will change it, right? It'll probably be a combination of many different things. So let's look at what those factors could be, right?
Yeah.
And usually there are 4 or 5 factors that if all 4 of us say one thing, we'll come up with those 4 factors, right? Okay. But let me say, for example, the talent is extraordinary. Our education system that has been there for the last several decades, that we've had IITs, the Indian Institute of Science, the NIPERs, the whatever, all the academic institutions that have been placed which provide affordable, high quality education to students, has created a talent pool which is probably the best in the world in terms of numbers, right? With a high quality education.
Yes.
Look at the manufacturing capabilities. I mean, today India is the largest manufacturing hub for not just vaccines, which we all know of, but all small molecules. We provide 40 to 50% of the small molecule drugs for every drug that is made in the United States, and maybe many parts of the world are getting drugs and manufactured. So the manufacturing capability is there, right? The talent is there. Yep. The government interest is there. BIRAG, Department of BIRAG, there's a lot of government support that is happening, right? No one thing. The missing pieces may be the venture capital, the high value, the investment that is required, the $100-200 million investment required to take things to the next level. That may be required. Digital capital. India is the digital hub of the world. I mean, IT is the merger between IT and BT, IT and biotechnology, is imminent. It has to happen. And where will it happen best? It will happen in India. All the people who have cell phones, all of the healthcare, the distribution of the healthcare. India may never have an insurance process. We may never have insurance like we have in the United States. But a completely different model will appear out of nowhere, out of some some ingenious thinking, through some aggregator where healthcare can be provided to millions of people. So all of these multiple things will come together, and suddenly that leapfrog will happen.
I have goosebumps, like the kind of passion with which you're talking about this. And I think this is exactly what our country needs right now. You straddle India and USA, and you have these ideas. And these ideas, I hope, through our podcast and through your book, for example, will get translated into reality. And, people are going to start thinking about it. And They probably are. We never know, we don't know. And this impact, this visibility of Indian research and advancement to affordable medicine will happen really soon.
Yeah, we always are very good at bashing ourselves that, oh, we didn't do this. India said, मुझे बताओ one innovation that came out of India that made India. But नहीं है, क्या कर लोगे? नहीं है.
Right.
Right? लेकिन हम लोग सिप्ला का जो HIV vaccine, we didn't discover HIV drugs, but we made them affordable for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Right? There's innovation in that.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean like, everybody has to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And because I'm not saying we don't, but let's say we do less of that. We have less Nobel laureates, for example, in the world, right? And every year we hear 2-3 Nobel laureates from the United States. So, but we are good at certain things.
Yes.
Let's do that better than anybody else in the world. Like that. That's sort of the and taking this US and India to another extreme. Because I am now a citizen of both countries, like I'm an overseas citizen in India and also a citizen in the US, I feel like this nationalism, the whole concept of nationalism is bad for humanity. Everybody should become world citizen and allowed to go anywhere in the world, and we should dissolve all the barriers.
See, now your glass is overflowing. It's not full anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what an enlightening beginning. I mean, a humble beginning with great mentors and of course, hard work. We also appreciate you putting all our minds at ease relating to the current pandemic and vaccines. Your insights into USA and Indian biotechnology level is also thought-provoking, and we hope India will be on the path to success soon as well. Your thoughts on Indian startups are also really very, very interesting.
Yeah, and having Vikram, you mentioning that Naren has himself started a company, Symphony Tech Biologics.
Absolutely.
He straddles India and USA, providing engineered solutions to pharmaceutical companies. So Naren, you promised that the application of statistics-based solutions can help manufacture drugs better. It is only imminent that we also get the origin of Symphony Tech Biologics as well. So how did Symphony Tech begin?
So this was a company that my brother-in-law, my friend, and actually my friend first and then brother-in-law, Ravi Khare, and his partner, Atul Khandekar, started in early 80s. And they are engineers and they are the real entrepreneurs. They left college and started the company. They never really worked anywhere much. And that is true entrepreneurship, where you lay your line, you bet against the odds of your own life and livelihood. And then you say, I'm going to do something fantastic. And you really have passion to do that. So for the last 30 years or so, they've been doing this work in the area of data analytics, in the engineering side of business. They are mathematicians and statisticians.
Okay.
And so they understand numbers, they understand how to do modeling. They do all of these. In my term, in my language, it'll be like fancy this is not my comfort zone. And so when I talked to Ravi and Atul several times over the years, I slowly started to understand what they are trying to do in terms of using data to make processes better, to inform your clients or your customers to work a little bit better in terms of their processes, looking at trend analysis, looking at design of experiment, looking at modeling things and predicting things in the future that could happen, of risks that you could anticipate using mathematics.
Yeah.
So when I left Biocon in 2019, Ravi and I had a deep conversation around this, and I was telling him about biology, and for him, biology is a foreign subject. So when I told him about recombinant DNA technology and how recombinant DNA technology can be used to manufacture goods and et cetera, his question will be, hey, what is DNA? So we are both learning completely new languages in our 60s now, both of us, and we're having such a great time understanding. And I'm learning a little bit of mathematics. He's learning a little bit of biology. He's gone one step further. He's actually gone back to BITS Pilani and is doing his master's in engineering, in software engineering, learning AI technologies right now at the age of 60.
That's
So
Wow.
amazing.
he's really pushed the
Yeah,
yeah.
commendable.
So what we do is we talk to a lot of different industries in the pharmaceutical business,
Yeah.
and a lot of my friends, pretty much my friends in the industry, and they've given an opportunity for us to look at their problems and try to see if we can help them solve them through mathematical means. So
Hmm.
that's what we are exploring right now. And we've
Yeah.
got about 20 employees now in Pune. We develop
Okay.
some software tools to do that, and we like to look at ourselves as a company that is doing something to help both the industries, both the biology and the engineering side of things.
Yeah. So, like that's all very nice about, why you translated and why you started the company. But I mean, truth time. Was it because you wanted to be your own boss? You wanted freedom from all the politics and administrative stuff?
Well, I was not really looking to start the company or looking to be an entrepreneur when I left Biocon or when I was planning to leave Biocon. My role was, I was going to retire. I mean, at the age of 58, you retire officially in India. I think it's a great thing that you retire early in 58. I think people should retire even earlier in the future, because if by 58 you haven't figured out how to live for yourself, then it's too late. But anyway, but I retired at the age of 58, and what I was originally planning to do is do a little bit of consulting and travel the world, and have a good time in the rest. I don't know what I was thinking, but one of the things that Ravi told me, you will be bored in like 3 months or 2 months.
Yeah.
You'll be
Yeah.
bored if you don't have a job, if you don't have something to do, because you've worked all your life and you
Yeah.
suddenly can't not work.
Yeah.
And so he was right. I mean, I think having the company gave a sense of a little bit sense of a purpose, saying that, okay, I have this responsibility of ensuring that, to get salaries, make sure that 20 people are paid salaries.
Yeah.
That you have to do some things. So
Yeah.
but you're right. You're right, Charu. I think part of it was like, let me be my own boss also once.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
great.
also, if you want to be responsible for the salaries of 21 people instead of 20, I will send you my resume.
Yeah, we're always looking for interesting people
Thank
to
you.
join us.
Yeah, so you've told us a bit about Symphony Tech, and it helps pharmaceutical companies again to perform risk assessment, provides mitigation strategies during a product's life cycle.
Yeah,
So like maths and statistics is all fancy to you. This is all fancy terminology to us. In simple words, what does Symphony Tech do?
yeah. So in Symphony Tech Biologics, which is a different company from Symphony Tech, which is the engineering
Okay.
side of the business,
Okay.
we have I would call 4 pillars. The first one is the data pillar, where we help people collect their own data. And in that, we have created an electronic quality management system, which contains an electronic notebook, a learning management system, systems that can collect data for you.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing we do is, once that data is collected, we analyze that data, and that analysis of the data, the software that is required for analyzing the data, that is the second part of the pillar that we do. The third part is, using the data that we generate and analyze, we do predictive modeling, mathematical modeling for prediction, develop predictive models using mathematics to predict what can go wrong potentially and anticipate things that could potentially go wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's the third, which is again software related. Mm-hmm. And the fourth pillar is sort of the human brain, use our experiences, collective experiences, in trying to help solve problems that the companies may have, using our personal experiences. So the continuum of what we do is, we take data, analyze it, predict what could go wrong, or predict risks, and then provide solutions ultimately to the whole picture. I know a long answer. Right. But that's, in my mind, that's the progression of what we do in our company.
Yeah. Okay. So by as an example, and you can tell me if it's wrong. So you basically say, for example, one thing could be that a company has come up with a drug, and you could potentially predict that your manufacturing capacity isn't enough that you can produce this much amount of drug by this time. So how to streamline the process more efficiently, for example?
Yeah, that could be one example. Yes.
Okay.
And the other example, the other extreme of the example, that is something that, for example, Ravi and his team are very good at because they are engineers, manufacturing. The other example of predicting would be your drug binds to target X.
Okay.
Right? That X induces signal transduction into a cell and induces calcium flux and induces transcription factors, induces expression of 20,000 genes at different levels. Those genes then result into proteins. Those proteins act on 10 different organs. We put mathematical equations between all of these middle things, and we can tell you whether your drug is going to work on this patient.
Oh, that's amazing.
Precision medicine.
Precision medicine through mathematics.
Very nice. We need it.
Yeah,
Absolutely need it.
So you're right. We use the mathematical algorithms to study manufacturing processes, like you said, make manufacturing processes more efficient. And we also do the mathematics of biology. And that's sort of what we're exploring in both those spaces.
Mm-hmm. So I have personally had this discussion with you before, but I want for all of our viewers to also know how you realized a caveat. How did you realize that there was a need for Symphony Tech Biologics? Because what you're saying, of course, like in terms of precision medicine, I see it, that, we require this mathematical modeling. But in terms of manufacturing, streamlining, production, regulatory affairs, etc., I feel like companies already have these systems in place. So where is Symphony Tech Biologics so important in this area?
Yeah. So one advantage I had in my career was I worked in companies which were doing this kind of work. Like, I worked at Merck, who was developing vaccines, Amgen, which was developing biologics, and in Biocon, they were doing a lot of biosimilars work and also novel molecules. Yes. What happens in an industry, like I said, it's very regimented, right? Their goal is to get drugs approved at a particular timeline. Right? In order for them to get their drugs approved, they have to just go through their motions of checking all the boxes that they need to complete. Right? So pharmacology is done, toxicology. Toxicology is done, clinical trials. Clinical trials are done, you need to get the IND or the BLA document completed. BLA document is done, you submit to the FDA, FDA sends you the questions, you do an audit. It's like a machine, right? Very few people have time to look at whether the machine is oiled.
Okay.
Or whether the machine is working well or not, or how can we improve this machine. Right. So the operational excellence kind of teams that you have, right, in companies. And large companies do have operational excellence teams, but most small companies and mid-sized companies can't afford to have teams who are constantly improving your process and looking at how you can improve. So there's where a company like Symphony Tech can come in and help people improve what they are currently doing and have a larger impact with the same kind of work that they're doing already.
Yeah. It's quite a bit of an out of the box thing, right? It's completely out of the general industry working, because like they say, if it isn't broken, why fix it?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of you're like, that's okay, but we need to improve it. And the same kind of out of the box thinking, I think, also goes with your co-founders. You said they're engineers, and they specialize in mathematics, statistics, programming, that sort of a thing. So do you think non-life scientists are better or set out for success starting these life science ventures?
That's an interesting question. No, the short answer is no. I think it doesn't really depend on your education, or it really depends on some aptitude that you might have, right? Entrepreneurship requires a little bit of a thick skin to take on criticism all the time, to be able to accept failures all the time, and to see how those failures can teach you all, to take your next steps. That sort of ruggedness of perseverance is a real quality that is required to be an entrepreneur, I think, and that can come from anyone. And so, what I think, I won't say that all successful entrepreneurs do this, but I think successful entrepreneurs know that they can't do everything, And so they find people who can do things for them, and then build teams who can get things done. And I think that's something that is a art that I don't think can be taught either. Some of it comes intrinsically, some of it comes through observing how other people work. And so that's I think making people work together, figuring out a way of how people can work together and bring diverse experiences to make something brand new is something that entrepreneurship requires.
Yeah, so it's like finding the correct puzzle pieces.
Yeah, finding the correct and vulnerability is a word that I think a lot of entrepreneurs experience. They may not express it, but many times entrepreneurs have to remain vulnerable to things that could go wrong, and their whole business could fall apart because of some wrongdoing or some wrong step that they took, or some competition came along. So that awareness that something could go wrong, very large could go wrong all the time, always on their head. That risk is very high, and not many people in life want to take that risk. Everybody wants a safe journey in their career, right? Salary coming in every year, increments coming every 2 years.
Yeah.
Every 3-4 years, my house is a little bit bigger, my car is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
A little bit further away I'm going a little bit further away on vacation. And suddenly you're 60 and you have to retire, and then you don't know what to do.
Yeah, but then you can join an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah.
And start living all over again. Yeah, so on the same lines, was this so when you joined Symphony Tech Biologics in 2019, when you founded it, was this your vision for what the company is right now, or has it evolved over time? Was there perhaps an incident right at the beginning that kind of shaped what it was going to be?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I've not done anything like it before in terms of entrepreneurship, like true entrepreneurship. There has been some entrepreneurship-like activities when I was in leadership positions in these companies. But when we're doing entrepreneurship, I think one of the things that I learned from Ravi and Atul is you have to keep adjusting your plans, not the purpose, not necessarily the purpose and mission and what you ultimately want to do, but the specific tactical things you might have to work on. Like, for example, we had said, we're going to have the manufacturing division of how, we're going to improve manufacturing in India, right? But no one wants to talk to us, right? For example, we've not got any experience in working in that directly. It's great to say that we'll have all these solutions for you, but show me what you've done before. Somebody has to give you that opportunity to try what you're doing. But meanwhile, somebody comes and asks the question, hey, can you tell us whether our drug will work in this scenario or not, in this kind of a cancer or not? Hey, you know what? Maybe our mathematical methods that we use can apply to that problem also. So then sort of we steer on working on in that direction in our company. So the company keeps adjusting slightly towards the direction based on what the needs of the industry are. But you're not going something, you're not making soaps, for example, tomorrow, right? Although we can, and I think Ismo there's a very funny comedian called Ismo. I don't know if you've seen him. He's from Finland.
Okay.
And a lot of people say something like there's some gadget that people are using, right? And what gadget should we say? Let's say a lawnmower. Okay. I think he talks about a lawnmower. And the lawnmower makes a racket, makes a lot of noise, and even the most sophisticated lawnmower is like very noisy, and it's not very easy to use and all that kind of stuff, right? Then somebody walking by saying, we put a man on the moon, I'm sure, and yet we can't make a lawnmower.
Quiet lawnmower.
but Ismo sort of analyzes it further, and I love the analysis that he does, and this is why I like him so much. He says, he says, wait a minute. The people who are putting the man on the moon are not the same people who are making the lawnmower.
Oh, absolutely.
but,
Yeah.
but if they stop all their activity
Mm.
of putting the man on the moon and leave everything and decide that they want to work on a lawnmower, then maybe they may be able to make a quiet lawnmower. Right? The reason I'm telling you this is that when you ask the question, what do we do for the what does Symphony Tech do and what is our guardrails is what we want to do. We sort of play in this space, right, of data analytics and pharmaceutical industry and manufacturing and mechanism of action. And we don't make soaps. We can make soaps, but we don't. But that's sort of the broad outline and the sort of curly bracket ISMO joke.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess, while being at the right place at the right time is important, we have certainly learned a way to analyze and establish that there are unanswered needs, always looking for a solution. And the novelty of Symphony Tech services is definitely a big asset in that aspect.
Yeah. So, sir, like your startup in a way isn't limited just to the company. In September 2021, we all know that you published a book, Good Genes Gone Bad, through Penguin India. So a much needed book, especially in today's time, which provide a kind of like a layman, a glimpse into the awesome world of pharmaceuticals. So congratulations on the publication, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
In this book, you recount complex and challenging drug development failures and eventual success stories. We do have few questions for you, and we will be careful not to reveal more than what's on the back cover. So, Charu, please.
Yeah, Vikram, that's a wonderful gist. I think you stole it from Penguin India, huh?
Absolutely. That's what I've been doing. Yeah, that book is amazing,
So in your words, Naren, how would you describe the book? And can we see the book again?
Actually, this is one of the rare books that is available that is physically is present in the United States. There's no physical copies in the United States yet. It'll come in a couple of months, I'm told.
Yeah. Because we also looked and we can buy it in India. So that's what Vikram and I were discussing the other day. I do have a question for that at the end also, but I'll still tell you. So we were looking and we were like, oh, it's in Penguin India. Maybe we can ask our relatives to buy it and keep it.
That's true. That's the only way you can get it for now, but not available physically in India. Yeah, but to summarize what the book is about in my own words, it is about failures. One of the things that I have experienced, all of us have, is during the drug development process, there have been a lot of failures. And what I notice is we don't write about our failures. We don't write a paper on this thing failed, right? We always write that this thing succeeded. So we don't write a lot about failures. So I have been writing about failures quite a bit, not in the book, but in blogs, in my own notes, to really understand what has been failures, and whether it was at earlier on in my career when I was doing my PhD, or whether I was in Amgen or Merck or UPenn, I've observed large failures occurring all the time. These failures are occurring all the time around us, but we don't analyze them and look at them carefully. All I've done is I've taken them and carefully started looking at them as why did that failure occur, and what could have been done to prevent it, and what could have and what happened after the failure, because after the failure usually it's always a success.
Yes,
right? Because you're at the bottom of your bottom of the curve, and the only place to is going up. So then what happened because of that? And that's what allowed me to evolve. And so one picture that I've drawn through my niece Gauri has done the doodling on this book. But if you look at any if the y-axis is sort of success in numerical value, then the story of gene therapy, something good happens, it goes up, then some patient dies, and it comes down, then you go up and come down and go up and come down. And so in biology or mathematics, we learn that when it goes up and it comes down, the inflection point is point just before the point that is coming down, right? Something happens, and that's why the curve comes down. And so by studying inflection points in a way, and has allowed me to look at critically through the reasons for the failure, and what happened after the failure. So that's what the book is about.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting thing. And so while I was reading the back cover of the book also, and I think in somebody's review, I forget, on the Penguin India page, it says it's a collection of failures. And that ultimately defined the fate of success in drug development. And that's quite interesting, because recently I had the opportunity to visit the Kennedy Space Center, where they talk about another large failure, Apollo 13.
Yes.
And if they didn't talk about Apollo 13, there would be no International Space Station. There would be no SpaceX, all of these things, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of also an equivalent to what your book is about. It's about the Apollo 13 had to happen so that SpaceX could take its flight.
So true, so true, so true.
Yeah. So it's a popular and catchy title, Good Genes Gone Bad.
Yeah.
How did you settle on it?
No, there was not much choice. My editor, Gurveen Chadda, she was very, very good. She's done this for a living. And she said this, she read the first chapter that I had sent her to read. It was about hemophilia and the story of my friend Murli, who has hemophilia. And it was his gene that is mutated, the factor VIII gene that is mutated, which caused the disease. But ultimately, gene therapy will treat him in the future, right? So Good Gene Gone Bad. So it was heavily influenced by the first chapter. Although the rest,
I mean, it's a weird way of seeing it. Sometimes I see genes on like a motorcycle with a black jacket and stuff, but like it's not really meant to be that kind of like bad boy kind of cool. So well, writing as a scientist is a key asset. You've done it all your life in academia. You've written SOPs and probably so much more during your time in the industry. How was it different to write this book when compared to scientific writing of papers as well as book chapters?
Very different, very different. I think writing layman language for scientists is very difficult, actually. I don't know, you've also probably experienced similar kind of things. To explain a very difficult subject in a very simple way is an art. The ability to tell stories is not easy for us. I use us as a generic scientist term. And this is something that we have to learn. We have to learn how to do this. And fortunately for me, because of my passion to teach, I teach a lot, and I've been teaching all through my career. I literally catch people and teach them all kinds of things, whether it is immunology, or whether it's about drug development, or it's about drums or anything. I'll just teach anybody anything. Because I know in the back of my mind, when I teach, I learn more. So that is one of the reasons I keep teaching. So when I started writing, I found it really difficult. But then, fortunately for me, there was a course in Bangalore on writing that I took, which is called Bangalore's world famous semi-deluxe writing program.
Semi-deluxe, wow. That's interesting title.
Why didn't you take deluxe?
This is not my course. This is a course my friend teaches, and she's a writer. And it was an 8-week course where they teach you how to write books, basically, or of different genres. So first week you write a poetry, second week you write a short story, third week you write a long story, fourth week you do translations, fifth week you might write an essay on a current topic that is happening. Next you write a children's book, children's article. So every week is different genre, and there are about 30 students in the class, and everyone reviews each other every week of what they've written, how they, and you get to see 30 different articles every week that people have written. So in a small 8-week period, got a big, nice, good dose of reading, of writing in different styles. And so I started using those styles. It took me 3 years to write the book, but I use methodologies to write the book in this way. And the first edition, the first part of the book, I had written almost very quickly. Within a year, I had written the whole book. But then it took me another 2 years to sort of simplify the book, so to speak. where I use 3 specific methods to simplify the book, with the various chapters. One is I use analogies wherever I could find them, to explain complex phenomena.
Yes.
And the second is I try to find out from a historical perspective, if I'm writing a story, what else was happening at that time, to put a reference to context. And then the third thing is made it personal by saying what was happening to me at that time in that part of the story. So it became a storytelling exercise, and also almost like a little bit of an autobiographical process during the writing of the book. That's what made it a little simpler for me. I'm curious to see what everybody says, how simple it is.
Yeah. It's obviously really difficult to translate scientific words and like scientific jargon into something which everybody will understand, and also to come up with these sort of analogies that the common person would relate with. In our podcast series, part of, so we start off with your expert engage interview. We also have other podcasts. I recently also listened to a science journalist referring to the same thing. You know, she's used to writing these complex words, and now she has to write for a newspaper. So it's really difficult to kind of be like, you know, what would a common person like? And as you mentioned previously, your partner once asked you, what is DNA? Explain this a little bit more. How do you come up with that level of patience? Because it's so difficult sometimes, you know, like, so my partner is not from, so my husband is not from life science, and he'll ask me all of these interesting questions and I want to answer them, but it takes up a lot of patience as well. So how do you manage that?
Well, I don't know whether it is intrinsic or not, but you know, I guess you have to like the person to be able to tell that story. Like if you don't like, some random person would have asked it, I wouldn't have liked it. Yeah, so that is one part. I think the analogy, in fact, Ravi is my friend. He's an expert in the analogy part, and you know, we make up all kinds of analogies. Sometimes the analogies are so bizarre that the analogy is more complex than the actual. So yeah, so for like the example of RNA and DNA that I talk about, I tell that story in the book about how DNA is your recipe book when you're cooking, and RNA is the raw material that you might use for cooking, or the masalas, maybe your post-translational modifications, and then
okay.
That's interesting.
That book is going to be a fun one to read, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Naren, you know, there are very popular writers' diseases. So writers get writer's block, lack of muse. Did you also suffer from any of these?
Not really. I think, like you said before, I've been used to writing a lot. I've written a lot of scientific articles. Where I would say struggled was how to simplify the book. I never. I mean, these are only few stories that I've written. I can write yet another book of enough more failures, but you know, I didn't want to write only about failures. At some point, I also got saturated with all the failures. You know, that's enough already. But there's endless number of failures that you can write about. Maybe somebody else can take on where I left off. But it's I really never had trouble. But one thing that was interesting for me was when I sort of reflect back on my writing process over the last 3 years, the best writing, I would say, the best writing experience that I had was in the worst of places, which is, you know, waiting for the flight to take off, or hoping that the flight is delayed so that I get a little bit more time to write a little bit more while I'm waiting for my flight, or sitting in a crowded train, or sitting in a very busy cafe and a lot of noise happening around me, right? That's where I thought I wrote the best. When I sat in front of a beach, or I sat in a farm and, you know, everything was perfect, I always fell asleep. So it was like, really, but I think it's sort of a little bit of time pressure. We're all used to working against a timeline, right? So when there's less time, you quickly get things done.
Yeah, we like deadlines, we like I think I maybe most of us in the scientific community like to work under pressure. It's like,
Yeah.
That's the best way. We're the best people to work under pressure.
Yeah. So I think the similar thing was sort of my own experience in writing.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, you didn't have writer's block, you didn't have a lack of muse, like all you had the oddest places where you would write. But were there, I'm sure there were editorial conflicts.
I mean, what do you mean by editorial conflicts?
You said you had to tame down the language a lot. So perhaps your editor had these several notes back and forth, your lack written copy completely read, returned, something like that.
I was really lucky in that regard.
Okay.
First of all, my editor had agreed to publish the book even before I wrote the book. Just based on the concept that I told her, she was happy to publish the book. But this was a great relief, because then, many people struggle finding a right publisher to get published. But that I didn't have that problem. The other thing is, she did give me a lot of feedback on further and further simplifying. And so the methodologies that she suggested of using analogies and putting my stories in between was sort of a discussion with her. She came up with those ideas. No, I think editing wise, I guess the difficult part for me was to decide which failure story should I tell, because I could have told many more, right? And I'm obsessed with this number 7, so I have to choose 7 stories. So I just chose these 7, and then COVID happened, and I wanted to write the COVID story. So I wrote the COVID story, but then if you look in the table of contents, the COVID chapter has no number.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so you have, so I mean, well, you have like a whole thing about the COVID-19 vaccine. So I'm sure you, like whatever we discussed in the first part, I suppose you've given us more insight into what you really think about it all.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, what has happened is I was part of the COVID vaccine task force in India, and also the Pfizer vaccine was developed by Pfizer, and the lead person there is Catherine Jensen, with whom I've worked in the past and developed the HPV vaccine with her. And Jackie Miller, with whom I worked on the rotavirus vaccine, is the lead in Moderna. So I know them personally. So I have almost everyday conversations with them about how they are experiencing developing the vaccine. Wow. So I can tell personal stories in the vaccine.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah.
I think we need another book with just these experiences, like fast pacing through the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I won't say tired, but I mean, in the last year or so, I before you ask the question, maybe like what book are you going to write next? Is I don't know, but I've been reading a lot about history of art in the last couple of years.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to weave something in the area of history of art with science and music and some combination of all of those things.
Wow.
That sounds interesting.
It's a perfect science communication book, na?
I think so. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll worry about it later. Right now, I'm just enjoying that this book is published.
Yeah, and of course you should. I mean, it's hard work. It's coming down to just these few stories about your massive experiences and these personal stories about your friends in them, the COVID-19 vaccine. You worked with the pioneers of modern vaccine production. I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting read. And but I have to ask you, I mean, I know that this book is en masse, it's for everyone, but who did you, while writing it, aim it towards, and who do you think will benefit most from reading it?
Good question. I think the book is primarily written with students in mind.
Okay.
Students of biotechnology, students of any sciences, or not necessarily science, just students. Because what I've written about the book is not just the science. I've written a lot of my personal learnings that I've learned. Like, for example, I've written about a process of how to ask questions. I've written about a process of how to make decisions. I've written about a process of how to do things quickly and fast. Right. And so a lot of soft skill things that I've learned over the years myself are we into the scientific stories.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not comparing it to you, but I think it's really interesting that you've also written about how to ask questions, because that's such a difficult thing. They always tell us that, oh, no question is stupid, just ask. But there's a way of asking a question, and we always have that apprehension that no, it's like, अरे नहीं ये तो बेकार है, कोई ऐसे सोचेगा, वैसे स्पीकर सोचेगा ये क्या लोग बैठे हैं यहाँ पे.
Exactly.
So it's that's I think that's going to be very helpful. So where can we buy the book? I know you said just Penguin India, but when do you think it's going to be there in USA?
My publisher says it'll be somewhere in the early next year, but the Amazon Kindle version is available even now. It should be available worldwide on Amazon immediately. If you want the physical book today, you'll literally have to have your relative bring it for you.
Good things flights are opening.
I'm sadistically, not sadistically, but in a weird way, I'm actually liking the fact that it is a little bit exclusive, not easily available.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of buzz about this, right? So I don't know if everybody knows about this, but every day that I open LinkedIn, and then there are people like cancer experts, and God knows who you have interviews with, and like all of these big people talking about this book. There's definitely like a lot of buzz. It feels like the next big book in science. I mean, it's more realistic. Like I've also read a lot of Robin Cook's science fiction, and then there's also there are books, My Journey to the Cure, sort of books, like where this doctor talks about his battle with a very rare disease. And this seems like another aspect of those kind of not fiction, and not like not a textbook, but on the journey.
But I've been around quite a bit, and I really enjoy some things. Like, for example, there's one book. This is something that I struggled with my not struggled, but I was telling my editor a long time ago that I don't want to write more than 100 pages book. I want to write a book only on 100 pages, because I myself don't feel like reading fat books. I don't expect anyone else to read fat books. Let me concisely tell the story in 100 books. Then the discussion. No. You have to have at least 200 to 300 pages. I said definitely not 300. I will not read 300 pages. I'm sure there are a lot of people like me in this day and age who don't want to read 300-page books. So I wanted to keep it small. But one of the most famous books in the world is a 100-page book. It is What is Life by Erwin Schrödinger, written in the 1920s. It's less than 100 pages, but it is one of the most famous books in the world. I'm not comparing myself in any way to Erwin Schrödinger, but I'm nowhere in his league. But the reality is that many books, for example, really find their life maybe many years later after certain things have happened. So I'm not too worried about the book not selling, or people not knowing about the book and all that. Maybe in a future generation, will find something interesting in this book that touched their heart, or some chord touches, and that's okay. And that's what I felt like doing at this stage in my career. It is sort of a documentation of my experiences. Now, if someone likes it, great. If nothing likes it, if not many people like it or don't really appreciate what's written in it, which I'm not saying it in a negative tone, it's a fantastic way, and I tell everybody to write a book, because it not only tells other people what you've done, it also tells you yourself what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It forces you to tell yourself systematically the things that are in your head. Only when you write do your thoughts become clearer.
Yeah.
Is what I've learned. So write it for yourself. Don't even write it for anybody else.
Yes, absolutely. That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Narendra, for giving us that insider look into the publication world. I'm sure our discussion has made our audience keen to get their hands onto this scintillating piece of literature. I sure am. So yeah, I would ask our audience to get this copy as soon as possible.
So
Yeah.
changing tracks now, we have taken a look at your expressed achievements. What we haven't yet interviewed is your philosophical mind. We want to know your true, unadulterated thoughts on certain issues that bug us, we need advice with, and sometimes that are rather left unsaid. In your book and also in our last section, you mentioned something about inflection points. So when we were looking at that graph and you said these are the inflection points that help you determine success and failure. What are these inflection points, and can they be altered according to a person's need, or are they always constant?
Excellent point. So inflection point is not something new. I think this is something in we learn in our biology in high school. When we look at curves, and the point of the curve where the shape of the curve changes is the inflection point. And so we don't think a lot about that. That is probably a mathematical equation for an inflection point in statistics. But the way I've looked at it over the years is trying to find out things that can help people, myself first of all, in my own careers. So the way I explored inflection point was when you look at a cell culture, and you're growing your cells in your tissue culture flask, you have an x-axis and a y-axis, and the cells are growing in a sigmoid curve, right? Biological systems, cells never grow linear in the long. They will always first take a little bit of time to grow, but then they start growing, and then they suddenly will stop growing, right? So the question is like, what are the factors in a cell that allow the cell to go from sort of a flat, almost flat line to suddenly going, changing the shape of that curve? And so to understand cell culture, you need to say, okay, it is probably the media that they have good nutrients. It is probably the cell passage number is low. The genetics of the cell are really good. The cells are secreting growth factors. And you can find many other factors like this, which then ultimately allow the cell to grow, right? And exponentially, all biological systems grow exponentially like that. So if you now reflect on that and bring philosophical discussion in this space, then you can say, okay, my career also can be like this, right? So compared to the media and the cell culture and the DNA and everything else that is there in the cell, what are the analogies of that in your career growth? It is the attitude, what attitude you have, how courageous you are, what courageous things have you done? Do you have a mentor? Is the environment that you're in is that the right place for you to get the best out of you? Is your supervisor good? So there are some things in your control and something not in your control when all of these factors come together, suddenly your career will take off, right? So that's how I sort of look at inflection points, and because sort of I've been studying or reading about these inflection points for many years, I take many analogies, right? So cell culture was one, your career was another. In like I told you in the gene therapy trial, the death of the patient in the clinical trial was the low point of that clinical trial. Patient dying is the lowest dot on that curve, right?
Yes.
But before the patient died, a lot of things may have happened,
Absolutely.
right? Which could have been prevented.
Right.
For the patient not to. So those are the inflection points that would have resulted in that low point in the career. Or when you got approval of Luxturna, which is the eye gene therapy trial, right? That is a high point in that career. Luxturna got approved, but for that approval to happen, something else would have had to happen. So discovering things that lead to the bottom of the pit or the top of the peak, right? Discovering the things before that are in my mind sort of the factors of inflection points. Then usually not a single one.
Yeah. I mean, as you also mentioned, an inflection point could also be dependent on how a person is mentored. And that is something I think you take quite close to your heart, because you're so active on social media, and you maintain that to guide students, to help people network. And I mean, I guess taking it a step further, you are on advisory boards of several diseases, as well as on the COVID-19 action force in India. How do you find time to do all of this? Is there a time management trick that you have, or a story that you can share?
Well, Charu, last time we spoke a little bit casually was about and what I've written also in the book is about a course that again I did.
Yeah.
Now down to a course that you did. It's like there's an app for that. There's a course for that.
Yeah.
It's called Getting Things Done. It is a book by David Allen, and there's a company called Calm Achievers which does the training, and it's a really excellent course. And it is a methodology of how to do things systematically. It's a lot of common sense, but applying it to your daily lives.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I read in Harvard Business Reviews recently, which was all of these things that I read are very apparent, but they become clear when you start thinking about them. So rather than time management, what they say is you should manage your energy, meaning do things that are most difficult when you have most energy, and do things that are, that you can do easily when you have least energy. So I can give you a lot of examples of that. You can do the same. And so instead of having a time management sheet, have an energy management sheet, and then you can get things done.
Yeah. So kind of like a priority sheet, like, what is something that really needs to get done? It's and will require most of your effort in a way.
Yeah. And then find where you can retrieve that energy. And I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were giving their nice analogy of a cell phone, right? So you have your phone, and the phone is always going out of charge, right? And you're always trying to preserve battery, right? When 1% battery is left, then that's not the time you're going to call some important call, right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
So, so
That's a good one. Yeah. So I mean, obviously we need to have a priority list and everything. The other thing that you, as I mentioned previously, you often do is something which is help people network. And you're quite involved in talking to people, in mentoring students, helping them out, giving them general advice. As you said, you catch people and you teach them whatever you can quite often. And that's something which modern job search advice is all about these days. It's no longer limited to applying and editing resume. Networking has become this really big thing. And do you think what do you think effective networking is, and do you think that it really works in getting you a job?
I think networking is important for careers. I think for networking is important for many different things. I think now with the advent of all the social media, networking has become quite easy, and almost impersonal, right? I can be connected to you, but I don't know anything about you. I only know what you've written in your social media blogs or what you post and all of that, but I don't really know you, right? From a human perspective. So I think ultimately networking has to be about the human touch. By human touch, I mean the human interaction. So I could know who you are, Vikram, based on looking at your CV that you're from here and you've done that. But when I find out that you're Maharashtrian and I can talk to you in Marathi, and they take it to that next level, so to speak, right? And suddenly we have a connection beyond just what our experiences are. Then we find something else, and we find some common person that we both know. Then suddenly that it's like a node that creates another interaction. So you keep looking for these nodes, but the bottom line for me is curiosity. A constant curiosity about different things is such an important thing for everything that we do.
Yeah
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, till now we've discussed a lot of your work, and all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and you are no dull Jack. Please share your hobbies, and because we know that there are many. And do you think that they have helped you throughout the years to keep your stress levels low and also contribute towards positive mental health?
Absolutely, no question about that. That, finding the right things that makes you happy all the time, you'll have to do. I think it's an important thing for everyone to do for themselves. Everyone has to figure out what makes them happy, where they can get their energy back, which is always draining, right? So that's something that is that I find myself, doing music and art and other things that I do to gain that energy back that I lose when I'm doing high-end science-related discussion, read one paper, or it's very different. So like my one of my relatives, he's a person who needs to concentrate when he has to read a book, or he has to read a paper, he has to read something. He can sit there for 4 hours and read the paper and read what he has to read and concentrate for that 4 hours and get it out of the way. 4 hours done, finished, done, and that he's studied everything that needs to be done in that. For me, those 4 hours are split over 4 days.
Yeah.
I can't sit for 4 hours in one time. I need 10 minutes and then I need to play the flute. Then 10 minutes and I need to go for a walk. And 10 minutes and then slowly those 4 hours will happen, but they happen over a period of 4 days. And I'm happy with that. And therefore, I can't do things last minute. I do need, and I am aware that I need, 4 days to do 4 hours of work.
Yeah.
So then I start much earlier.
Yeah. So so you would say hobbies are kind of like how you talked about energy management, that you do like the most difficult, most tedious things first, and then to retrieve all of that energy, get it back for like future tasks, you put in your hobbies as well. And so you would definitely recommend that no matter how, like you're a PhD student or you're a journalist or you're a fast food worker, you need to have hobbies.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn so many things from diverse people. So I have a whole bunch of friends who are musicians, just because I play music, right? And one of the, and you keep learning lessons. So for example, when I was in Biocon and I wanted to learn the flute, in Biocon I had a ridiculously busy schedule, right? So there was absolutely, even if I wanted time, I wouldn't have been able to find time to learn the flute. But there was an opportunity. What happened was my commute every day was 1.5 hours each way.
Okay.
And my driver used to drive the car, and he more than a friend. He's a friend more than anything else. So I used to drive in a big car. So I used to sit at the back, right, clear everything up, put an iPad in the middle, and have my flute class in the car. While I'm going from Indiranagar to in the 1.5, I not every day, but once or twice a week, I would do that session in the car itself. And playing the flute in the car is not easy. Like not easy physically, because it's like constantly bumping against something. The car is moving. The Bangalore roads out there always like up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And so playing the flute with all this nuance, right? And then I used to always try to give excuse to my teacher. Said, "This become very uncomfortable. I can't. Let's stop the class early because it's finishing off." He said, "No. Play the flute in the most difficult conditions, so that when you actually play in a good condition, it'll be very easy for you. So if you can play the flute in a difficult place, playing it in the easy place will be much easier." So that's a lesson that I learned from while learning to play the flute in the car.
That's amazing. Sir, as you mentioned, you love music, you play flute, you play a lot of different instruments also. So we also know about your non-profit organization, the Sangeet Society. I've been following that on Facebook, which kind of promotes Indian classical music. So how exactly that started? I mean, is it something like, what's the reason? I mean, why do you promote it?
Well, when I was in Philadelphia, what happened was, this is sort of a funny story a little bit, in the sense there was no awareness or anything about doing volunteerism. And now I tell everybody that you must volunteer. You must do something to give back to society, in some way, form or the other. And so since you asked about the Sangeet Society, I'm going to tell you about that, but it can apply to any volunteerism that you do. So a friend of mine and I used to love to go to Hindustani classical music concerts when we were in Philadelphia at that time. This is in the early 90s. And in order to see concerts, the closest that we could go was either New York or Washington, D.C., 2-hour drives each way, right?
Yes.
And so we said, why don't people come to Philadelphia to perform, right? Why don't these and it turns out that somebody has to sponsor them for them to come. They just can't come, right? Somebody has to invite them and do all of that. So we said, why don't we do it ourselves, right? So we started doing it ourselves, and my God, it is so much work to get in touch with an artist, to make sure that the artist comes to the city. You have to make sure that the person, you have to make the hotel arrangements, or they have to live with someone. You have to book a hall. You have to do advertising. You have to make flyers. You have to make sure people come. When people come, they need food. You have to collect tickets. You have to do a budget. You have to do taxes. It's like a full-time job.
Whole thing, right? Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it kind of gives like a whole management lesson, right? Being a volunteer, it teaches so many things.
So you hit the nail on the head, Vikram, because when I was at Merck and we were doing all of this work, I was sort of in a junior level positions at Merck, right? Not yet in the senior leadership positions.
Right.
But I was working like a CEO of a company while I was in Symphony, in that non-profit organization. So I was learning the art of management.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Unbeknownst to me, actually. I only understood that much later. That time we just did it for the sake of doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That makes sense. Yeah. So, sir, we know you play flute. You are a flute maestro. So can we hear like a tune from us? I'm sure our listeners will be really happy to listen a tune.
Yeah, I'm no maestro. I'm just learning. So, but I enjoy playing the flute, and I really it's one of those things that I wish I had done many years earlier. But never. What do they say? Better now.
Never too late.
Never too late. Yeah. Play a song. I like the song very much. It's a very difficult song to sing, to play. Lata Mangeshkar has sung this song many years ago. Madan Mohan's music, Lag Ja Gale. It is such a classic song, and it is sung so effortlessly. And many people have tried to reproduce it, and it's really difficult. So I love it because I like the song. Here it is. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. That's brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. It absolutely calmed me down. And I have to say that starting from today, I'm going to learn playing a flute.
Please do.
Yes.
Naren, your advice pertaining to inflection points, successful life, networking, and most importantly, that it is okay to have a hobby. And in fact, it is needed to maintain a healthy mind will be well taken, I'm sure. It's truly great hearing all of this from you because it normalizes that we can do things other than science or work.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm much too excited. I must ask you some questions, sir. The catch is that they're rapid fire, so you won't have any time to think. Simply blurt out what you think. So we just want to know the real Narendra Chirmule. So shall we begin?
Please, happy to.
Okay. So country you'd rather live in, India or the USA?
India.
Okay. What was more fulfilling, academic research or pharmaceutical industry?
Oh my God. Academic research.
Okay, sir. What is your favorite meal?
Maharashtrian food. Maharashtrian, like pitla bhat or pitla bhakri or something like that.
Love it. Yeah.
Best work experience, Amgen, Merck or Bio?
Oh my God. Biocon by far.
Would you rather be a full-time immunologist or full-time musician?
Oh, tough questions, yeah. Immunologist, actually. Yeah, but highly influenced by the COVID year.
Okay.
I'm glad I'm an
And,
immunologist. Yeah.
and which is your go-to holiday destination?
Egypt was one of the most amazing vacations that we took. I mean, it is such a rich in history country. That was probably one of the best vacations and best not vacation, but like we never generally. I generally we don't go to vacation where we sit on the beach and do nothing. My vacation is always doing something. It's like obsessive compulsive. Go to all these places like Peru and all that. So, but yeah, Egypt was amazing.
And instrument you would never get bored of, flute or tabla?
Tabla. Flute, I think I get frustrated quite a bit because I'm still learning. So there are some things I just can't do. But tabla, I'm very, very comfortable. So I've learned for many years. So I'm much more comfortable with tabla. And actually, one thing that I've learned with tabla is I'm able to play a lot of rhythm instruments, and I'm able to do many more things with tabla than I can. It's not just tabla, it's many more things.
Your preferred way of connecting, virtual or in person?
No question, in person.
Will you write a sequel to Good Genes, Fun Bad?
Probably not now, because I want to let things absorb, and it's not like I don't want to write 7 more stories. I want there to be something else other than just telling about the failures, and I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, that's understandable. Do you ever Google yourself?
Don't do it, but I think LinkedIn. I don't Google myself so much, but LinkedIn, yes. It's strange about how so many people keep liking what I post.
Now the last question, and you simply have to blurt it out, no thinking. Okay. Your favorite out of us 3, me, Vikram or Charu?
Charu, no question about it. She's like amazing because, first of all, Shreyansh, you haven't talked enough to give me your personality, and Vikram has been, asking questions which are sort of interesting, but Charu like pushes the button.
Thank you. But I have to say, all of these questions that I was able to ask you was like brainstorming with all of us. And this rapid fire, if you've enjoyed it, is completely courtesy Shreyansh.
Yeah, very good. I like the last one especially.
Okay, sir, that's great. You definitely did not hold back. And thank you for your participation, sir.
Hey, so sir, let me like a final question from me. What is your next venture? Is there anything urgent which you think need to be addressed right away?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm working on with various fronts. I'm working on many different things, but one thing that I'm really excited about is I'm working with Shulian University in Himachal, which is a small university which is doing really good work in ensuring this transition from high school to college. I think we have an unbelievable opportunity in India to transform the education process that happens in India. India mein kya hota hai ki we are always bookish knowledge, right? We are always taught to give exams and it's everything about the exam. Now with the new education policy that has been put out by the government, there's an amazing opportunity to transform the educational processes in India. So a high school student can study history and quantum physics at the same time, right? Which was never possible in the past. Right. And so in with Shulini University and Atul Khosla, who's the chairman, like visionary chairman over there, we are doing a program which is called the Young Researchers Program. What we do is we go to various schools. Now, today we're doing it virtually, but we'll be doing it physically also. We go to various schools and train teachers and schools in high schools on how to think innovate, not train, but make them think about how to think innovatively. Like I do a small training about how to ask questions, how to make decisions, all the things that are there, the soft skills that are there in the book, right? And then we ask schools to, the teachers, after we've done a little bit of not training, but more conversational things about how innovation can be started, innovative thinking can be started. We go to various schools and we tell schools, children, maybe right now 10th to 12th grade, to form teams of between 5 to 7 people, 5 to 7 groups in a small team, and then make proposals of what innovative idea would you have? Right. Let it just come. And very interesting ideas are coming up. We've had more than 100, 150 ideas from a school. And then we pick 5 or 6, which then, interestingly, Shulini funds to commercialization.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah,
that's kind of like helping people drop their inhibitions and just like, anything that you can think of.
Yeah. So very interesting ideas have come out of this. Very simple ideas, nothing very complex, but and the challenge is, how do you select the top 10 out of 100, right? So then I've got all my friends and all my network to get involved in this social activity that we're doing for bringing different ways to judge which 10 to select from, right?
Yeah.
And so this to me was a very exciting project. The kids are incredibly brilliant. And so the process that we are putting together on how to do this, we're going to literally publish a paper on this, so that the process then can be replicated by anyone, anywhere.
Okay.
To enable, because we'll be limited by how we can do our own thing, right? So if every school builds an innovative program like this in their school and allows children to, do innovative things as part of their curriculum, then I think the ultimate innovation in the world in the future will happen in India better, right? It will be better. So that's something I'm very passionate about, and I spend quite a lot of time doing this kind of thinking with. And then on the flip side, this is on the high school side, on the medicine and the research side. Today in India, there's zero university with an MD PhD program.
Yes.
Right.
That's true.
So fortunately, for me, Madhuri Kanitkar, who's Lieutenant General Madhuri Kanitkar, who's now the vice chairman of the
Maharashtra University. Yeah.
Universities, I've been talking to her, and she is very passionate about clinicians doing research.
Yes.
So and I've talked to her, and we may do something in that space. So both at the high school end and at that other medical school end, that's the two ends that I'm very interested in doing that. Plus, from a company perspective, if you can make some money, that's not so bad.
Absolutely. That's so true. I mean, much to ponder over. So you have given us so much of information, advices, and ideas that could last a lifetime. Although we could talk to you endlessly, it is the time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for bearing it all, and of course, for making time for us. It was an honor for all of us to speak with you. Since this is a recorded event, our audience will have some questions. Is it okay? Can they connect you on the LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way for me to connect with me at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We will have Naren sir's LinkedIn profile URL linked with this episode of Expert Engage for all our listeners. Please do share your feedback with us on biopatrika.in@gmail.com. We now take your leave and hope you all will enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.